First things first, rest in peace, DMX. Pour one out for the dog, everybody. With that said, thank you for joining us. Today's Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. I'm Trey Crowder. That's Mark Agee. What's up, Mark?
What's up, Trace? A little sad about how the Amazon Union vote went. Uh,
Yeah. We spent a lot of time on it last week. Didn't go our way. Went Amazon's way 2-1. But like in a way, that's kind of to be expected, right? That's what they do.
yeah, I mean, they did a bunch of fuckery, and
Right.
surprise, fuckery
It
works.
worked. It worked.
I mean, the original population of that warehouse was like 1,600 people, and Amazon moved 3,000 people in there. That apparently, when you hire Pinkertons to do personality profiles on all your employees to figure out who's pro-union, who's anti-union, to track all their work communications and so forth, you can tell pretty accurately who you want to transfer to Bessemer to vote against the union. So that
Right.
shit works, man.
Yeah, right. Well, it seems like effectively their propaganda boils down to like if you do that, your job will be fucked up. If not gone entirely, right? And
Yeah,
it's hard to that really sucks, but it's hard to blame just a regular working person for being freaked out by that, or for that being effective.
yeah. It's, I mean, this would happen if you don't have an actual like control, like a government who's interested in protecting its people, because their
Right.
pitch is like, look, if you don't let us fuck you over, we're going to move to a place where we'll be
Yeah.
able to fuck over other people who will have your job now.
Yep.
So I don't know what the answer to that is, other than
I know.
I understand why people would vote against it. It's like, oh shit, I'm barely surviving now. If they take away this job from me, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know the answer either, but I think it, could begin with, like you said, a government that actually gives a shit and does things about issues like that and helps out working people, which we will get into a little more later with our guest this evening. But with us,
Mhm.
as always, is producer Matt doing the damn thing. This is Weekly Skews. Tonight, we dive into the latest maddening example of police brutality from the increasingly typical state of Minnesota. Also, Johnson & Johnson's having themselves a little vaccine trouble. Should the rest of us be worried? We'll give you our opinion. Then, as I just referenced, we'll have a conversation on one of our favorite subjects here at the Skews, the future of progressivism in rural America, with two people on the very front lines of it, Stephen Smith and Katey Lauer from the organization West Virginia Can't Wait. I can't wait for that talk and for the rest of the show. It's going to be a great one. But first, as always, we begin with the Daily Dumbass. Matt, graphic, please. We got some great ones for you tonight. We got some great honorable mentions, but for our first dumbass up top, it's going to be a little different, actually. If you've been following us for a while, you know that former President Donald J. Trump has been honored countless times in this segment for his dumbassery. But tonight, for the first time in the history of the Skews, Trump will designate our daily dumbass. That's right. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's just hear it. Matt, play the clip, please.
Trump called Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell a, quote, dumb son of a bitch.
I love that clip. It's just so, it's like, it's always better, I think, when you're like distance from Trump and he isn't running your, the country that you live in and all that stuff. And you just hear the shit that he does and says kind of like secondhand like this, particularly when the target of it is someone like Mitch McConnell. But the context of all this makes it even funnier, right?
No, yeah, he's I mean, when he has no power over you, and the only person he's torturing and making miserable is Mitch McConnell, he's amazing. He's perfect. I
Right.
love him though.
Yeah.
But the context of this is, so Trump is stealing money. That's what he does. But one thing he's done is told small dollar donors to not give to Senate Republicans, instead to give to him, so he can decide who needs to be primaried and whatnot, which is a nightmare for McConnell, of course, because Trump wants to primary everybody who's sane. So they've been kissing his ass to the point where I think Matt has this. The Senate Campaign Committee, one of the Republican fundraising arms, rented out Mar-a-Lago this weekend to try to buy Trump's love so he'd stop fucking making their lives hell. It was at that event that he roasted Mitch McConnell. So
Yes.
yeah,
But not just it wasn't just like they held this event to like try to curry his favor. They really pushed the boat out. Matt, put up that the screen grab if you've got it of what. Here we go. Yes, President Donald J. Trump receives first NRSC Champion for Freedom Award. They made up a freedom award and even got a little freedom bowl to go with it and presented him with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, another way to put the inaugural version of an award is we made up this award to give to this moron. Like they just basically dumped some candy out of a bowl and handed it to him and said, "You're the champion of freedom." And he's
Right.
like, "Thank you. I appreciate this gift very much. I'm going to still make your lives hell."
Yes.
It's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, that was the context in which he called Mitch McConnell a dumb son of a bitch. But I mean, like, I gotta say, like, it seems like a good plan to me. You know, like the plan they had where Trump is concerned. Give him an award called the Champion for Freedom Award. It comes with a nice little bowl or whatever. Like you could expect that to work, you know, but yeah, they caught a lot of shit for it. Republicans ridiculed for gifting Trump made up tiny bowl award. What a wonderful headline. That
I mean, like there's a piece in New York Magazine today, like talking about why Republicans are so like they're so mad at corporations for like moving out of Georgia and putting together these like Chamber of Commerce statements about like how to how to push back against Republican the Jim Crow efforts to curb voting and shit. And it made the point that like all these people who'd split the bill for 4 years, who were like not going to be super pro Trump, but just kiss his ass a little bit and not going to go full never Trump, they could take the judges and the fundraising and the tax cuts and not have any of the stain, the bad shit, any of the stink on them. And what they've realized is even though Trump's gone, they did not get away from the heist clean. They are fucked. And because corporations are chasing young people. That's what they do. Young people tend to be more left wing. So there's nothing Republicans can do to Delta or Coke that's going to actually affect them because old people don't spend money on shit. So they got no leverage here. They got no card to play. They're talking about raising Delta's taxes, but Republicans aren't going to raise corporate taxes. Their only reason to exist is to cut them. So they're just they're screwed, and it's fun to watch them be a little tortured, even though they're going to win the long run because evil always triumphs over good. But if only there was ever a story written with a moral about how like getting easy wishes or deals with the devil or monkey's paws, how they work and how they never come out good in your favor. If only somebody thought to tell them those stories. If only that had
never been told before. If there were cautionary tales about dealing with the devil in this way. Yeah, but when your whole thing is dealing with the devil, and then the devil starts calling you a dumb son of a bitch, like that's just kind of what happens. Where do you go from there? All right, our first honorable mention tonight for Daily Dumbass, this particular White House reporter for coming at Jen Psaki with some weak shit. Matt, play the clip there about Biden's tweets when you got it.
Senator John Cornyn called Joe Biden's tweets unimaginably conventional and said that his comments were largely scripted and questioned whether he was really in charge. Does the White House have any reaction to that?
Well, I can confirm that the President of the United States does not spend his time tweeting conspiracy theories. He spends his time working on behalf of the American people.
Boom! Well, so like I kind of like the subtext of this that's like seems like his tweets are like scripted and stuff because they are like grammatically correct and properly written, as opposed to the previous president, or you could tell it was tweeting for him on behalf of himself because of how insane everything was. And so does that mean that he's out of touch and not spending enough time connecting with Twitter America?
Cornyn's trying to the normal Republican move is you walk right up to the edge of conspiracy theory and let somebody else fill in the dots here.
Right.
So he's doing that coloring in the line, connecting dots thing to try to say that Biden isn't really president, that he's just a puppet without actually saying it. So he actually almost said who's in charge, basically. If nobody's writing Biden's tweets and he's not doing public appearances, how do we know he's actually being president? And my answer is, if the things that are happening are mostly I'm in favor of, I kind of don't care who's doing them.
Also, dude, that's kind of what I'm saying about the subtext of like, we shouldn't want him to be the one who's actually tweeting, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, he has better shit to do than be tweeting. Like, I hope it's not him who's actually tweeting from his account because he's got other shit to preoccupy himself with.
Yeah. It is. It's, I mean, apparently, like they spent the last 4 years thinking being president was only being culture warrior in chief. So if Joe Biden's not going to be involved in the culture war, then what is he doing? Essentially, it boils down to the argument. But it's just like, it's another way in which they're fucking out. I mean, they're out to lunch. Like, they've been trying to figure out a way to poll against the infrastructure bill. The best they've got, it's like 70. The American people love it, like 75 to 25. They got nothing to go against it, so they're doing conspiracy theories about, whether Joe Biden's a puppet. I don't care.
Yep. All right. Our next honorable mention had to come back up. Congressman Matt Gaetz, for a lot of reasons. Yeah, we got a few different things to cover here as far as this goes. This guy, he's really, boy, in an era of dipshit monkeys flinging shit in that party. Like, he's really out here doing it, breaking new ground. They don't even know what to say about him. And for evidence to that point, let's watch this Fox News clip where they were asked
allegations.
Jessica, why are not only other Republican leaders, but most prominent media conservatives not out there defending Matt Gaetz? We don't have a clip to play from Fox.
Well, I think for two reasons. One, the allegations are incredibly serious, and we all have friends in life that maybe go down the wrong path. They marry someone we don't like, but not all of them end up being sex traffickers. And we didn't Venmo all of them $900 to be distributed by potentially underage girls. And then the second element of this is that Matt Gaetz isn't particularly liked. He's brash, he's insensitive, he's crude in a lot of ways. I think that a lot of people, even Republicans, look at stunts like what he pulled in the skiff with the Chick-fil-A, or wearing that gas mask on the floor, mocking Democrats who cared about their personal safety when the COVID-19 pandemic was breaking out, which obviously has claimed well over 500,000 American lives at this point. So Matt Gaetz has done his best to not make many friends. President Trump is still his friend, but even that statement that he issued, 2 sentences saying he didn't ask me for a pardon and he didn't do it.
Let me jump in and get to that. So
that is chef's kiss on a lot of levels. The first part of the argument said, like, well, no one wants to defend him because, well, we've all been involved in relationships where the person turned out to be a sex trafficker. That's one. And two, the second part of it is, it's not his fault. Nobody likes him. It's like just fucking amazing. I love it.
Right. Well, I feel like the first part of it was being like, look, we've all had, previous relationships. Hell, not that long ago, we were talking about old girlfriends. I was talking about how mine is a QAnon lunatic now. I'll tell you that. That's fine. She's not a child sex trafficker. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to defend a previous relationship when it's that hardcore. Also, it doesn't seem like it's that much of a previous relationship, right? The guy they're talking about is Joel Greenberg, who they mentioned the $900. You got that screen grab, Matt, put it up there. Gaetz, they were using Venmo for the
public Venmo, public transactions.
Yes, right, dude. Listen, I take acting classes and use Venmo to pay for it, and I put those on private because I don't want my buddies busting my balls about me trying to be a thespian or whatever, right? I do that. Yeah. They are publicly Venmoing child sex trafficking monies in full view. They've since deleted them, but so this article that you could see here, the first 2 paragraphs of it, just listen to how this is laid out. In 2 late night Venmo transactions in May of 2018, Matt Gaetz sent his friend Joel Greenberg $900. The next morning, over the course of 8 minutes, Greenberg used the same app to send 3 young women varying sums of money. In total, those transactions amounted to $900. The memo field that you fill out, Gaetz wrote, the first one he wrote test, but in the second one he wrote hit up blank, where he included a girl's nickname. And then when Greenberg turned around and made his payments to the 3 young women, the reason he wrote in, you don't have to write a reason in. The reason he wrote in was tuition, school, and school. So, I mean, it's really just front and center with the pederastery here. Like, I mean, they're not even trying. They're trying to get caught diddling.
Yeah. New York Times, right before you came on, had a news story come out that says that Greenberg has been cooperating with the FBI since the middle of last year, which that should be fun for Gaetz. And one of the things that Greenberg told them is they did give these women cash and gifts in exchange for sex. One of the women they Venmoed is now in porn. Right. If you're wondering if she was the person who would have sex for money, the answer is most definitely yes.
Yes, but Mark, a lot of the public fully supports Matt Gaetz, and you can tell by how he describes it himself. Listen to how much people support him. Matt, play that next clip.
We have your back. That is the sentiment I have heard from thousands of Americans at restaurants, walking through public parks, sometimes just out on the street, in emails, online donations. And I can't tell you how much it means to me. This past week has been full.
There you have it, Mark. People are literally yelling at him as he walks through the park. They're stopping him in traffic to say, hey, we love you. You're great.
Go sex with teens. That's what they're saying to Matt Gaetz.
We're all for it. This reminds me of, like, I had a buddy that I grew up with, was one of those pathological liars, you know, because like of deep insecurity, but his parents had some money. So he had like nice cars and stuff, but he was not otherwise, you know, in our parlance, hitting at all. And he used to tell us, he would come over and tell us stories, be like, dude, on the way over here, 2 girls ran out in the middle of traffic and made me stop just so they could get my phone number. Like, he used to say shit like that, you know, all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what Gaetz reminds me of here, except, as we've pointed out before, he's a U.S. congressman saying this in a public speaking setting. You know, people are just screaming at him, we love you, Matt Gaetz. We think it's great. All that diddling you're doing.
To backtrack a couple of minutes, I'm more concerned that something I said a few minutes ago sounds like I was against making fun of sex workers or against sex work, and I'm pretty libertarian on those fronts. I just think no one should have sex with Matt Gaetz for any reason. It's pretty just want to be clear.
But no, I know what you were just saying. Like, I mean, it's yet another sort of. I mean, I know why you're saying what you're saying now, but I think it was a valid point to make.
Yeah,
it's like, look, you know, this is the person who he was doing all this with. There are literally no reasons to doubt any of this as far as I've seen.
No, I mean, you like, there's, it seems like, I mean, I know people are under jails for way less evidence and less contradictory stuff. It's like, so I don't like, I don't know what you do. If this guy's being framed, it's a fucking masterful frame job by the deep state. Just fucking killer.
And again, running theme, they all know it too. And you could tell by the way they react when his name actually isn't even yet brought up, when it's about to be brought up, the way they react. Matt, play this next clip.
Governor DeSantis, we're off topic. What do you make of the allegations against your former...
I don't have anything to say. Anything else? Anything else?
Don't even get to his name. Like, what do you have to say about your former he's like, okay, that's good. I don't have anything to say.
Yeah, I mean, DeSantis is going to be running for president in 2024. He doesn't need this clip.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, yes, Matt Gaetz. Oh, Lord, what a dumbass. A dumbass for the ages. I got a feeling this particular dumbass saga has not yet been sang in its entirety, Mark. I think there'll be more to come. So, moving on, as we mentioned up top, as I'm sure many of you have seen today, big news in the COVID world, the Johnson & Johnson single-use vaccine. It's been recommended that the U.S. pause all administrations of that particular vaccine. The reason for it is 6 women, not that necessarily matters, but it's true, 6 women from the ages of like 18 to 49 have developed blood clots after receiving this vaccine. Now, those 6 women are out of a total of 6.8 million women or people, 6.8 million people, Americans, who have received the vaccine. So out of what the organizational or the regulatory organizations themselves called a, quote, abundance of caution, they are pausing them. But what kind of effect do you think this is going to have on vaccines in this country?
Well, I guess the good news is that this scientist who fucks up their every aspect of communications over the last 14 months. So no one's listening to him anymore. So I don't think it'll have any effect on any of this, because the sheer amount of panic over this. We just went through this with AstraZeneca. They did the exact same fucking fuck up where how this shit get construed. So 6 people out of 6 million have blood clots. They're pausing the thing to see what happens, to see if any more people have blood clots, and maybe we need to double check the math and the science or whatever. But to give you some perspective, I think 1 out of every 3,000 women or 30,000 women who takes over-the-counter birth control is going to have blood clots. The math, like, it's just, when AstraZeneca had this problem, they had like 4 people in their study come down with blood clots, and everybody freaked out, and like they had to come out and be like, look, that number of people, whether or not they got the vaccine, would be expected to develop blood clots.
Right. Right.
We didn't promise you the vaccine would make you never die. We cannot. I'm sure like 2 people in this study had pianos drop on them. The vaccine doesn't have shit to do with that. I don't know if the vaccine has shit to do with this, but the panic around it is dumb. I think it's probably fine. I would take the Johnson Johnson vaccine.
That's the only thing that I'm worried about is any kind of, like you said, panic surrounding it, because there's no reason to panic whatsoever. As Matt has pointed out over here in the comments, he said, this proves how serious they're taking safety. They're throwing themselves under the bus for 6 people. But yeah, I mean, if anything, it proves how well regulated and the degree to which they are, taking the safety of these vaccines to heart, that kind of failure rate is cause to like shut the whole thing down. There's absolutely nothing to freak out about at all. But anytime a headline like this comes out, you think that like the people that were already ready to shit all over the vaccines will take any opportunity they can to be like, see, look there, see, God damn it.
Yeah.
And that ought not be allowed to happen, because it's not, it's nothing to freak out about.
NBC News is online disinformation reporter who covers a lot of anti-vax stuff. Her name is Brandy Zandrozny. She went on MSNBC today and called it Christmas for anti-vaxxers, which it is.
Absolutely right, so. Exactly. That's the thing that worked. I mean, they did what they should. They did what they need to do. I'm not mad at them for doing it, but like, that's the thing that like upsets or worries me, is because yes, it's Christmas for anti-vax. They're just going to latch onto it, even though there's nothing to latch onto. But what can you do?
Americans don't understand science. Our textbooks are written by people that think politicians who think dinosaurs were here 4,000 years ago. Right. So we're just fucked on this. 40%. I saw 40% of Marines have turned down the vaccine. So if this was a Chinese virus engineered to weaken our national security, it's absolutely succeeded, but only because we're fucking stupid. So
40% of Marines.
Yeah.
U.S. Marines.
Yeah.
Well, they should like hide the vaccine in crayons or whatever. So then they'll eat it. They'll eat the crayons and they'll get it automatically. It's like hiding a pill in your dog's food or something. That's what they should do with the Marines.
Send your death threats to Trey Crowder.
Yes, I know. One of my absolute best friends is a Marine. That's why I'm aware of the jokes. I'm just making a joke. I know I don't have the right because I'm in the armed forces, but still.
Yeah.
If you were a little funny.
If the audience was all Army dudes or Navy dudes right now, you'd be murdering.
Yeah, they'd love it, right? But no, my good buddy James Bain, U.S. Marine Corps, and he taught me all those jokes. Here we go. Anyway,
I met James.
Yeah, James, he rules. He's one of the best people I know. Anyway, so before we get to our guest here in a few minutes, we are going to talk about the latest situation in Minnesota. As we mentioned earlier, happened not 10 miles from where Derek Chauvin is standing trial for killing George Floyd. A 20-year-old man named Daunte Wright was shot and killed by police after a routine traffic stop. He had a warrant for his arrest that came up. A disagreement ensued. The lady cop who shot him yelled taser, taser, as he was scuffling about in his car, and after yelling taser, shot a firearm once, which is what ended up killing him. He drove off, died from the wound a little bit later. But that just happened this weekend. Protests have been escalating, and we're back. Here we are again. Great timing, too. Not that there's ever a good time for something like this to happen, but they seem to have a sixth sense for doing the worst possible thing at the worst possible time where all this shit is concerned.
There's so much that's like okay, so I've been thinking a lot about this. But last summer, I think we talked about this somewhere. Like George Floyd's would galvanize people because it's horrific. But to me, the Louisville, I'm blanking on her name right now. The one we got killed in Louisville. Breonna Taylor was a much more typical and evil example of how the system works, because of how it was the shocking depravity of watching the guy choke the life out of a person on camera for 9 minutes that mobilized people. It's easier to say that's like that. Obviously, it was very like sociopathic and heartless and whatever. But this is just the normal course of how business works. And so much of this, it's like they did a pretext stop about either, depending on who you ask or what day the news is, either it was an air freshener hanging from his a rearview mirror, or he didn't have county tags yet on his new car he just got. say pull them over for pretext stop, which pretext stops, the Supreme Court has said those are fine. You stop a person under false pretense just to fuck with them or to double check their papers or whatever. So they do it to stop this guy. They run it. They found out he has a warrant out. The warrant is for a failure to appear in court. He didn't rob a bank. He didn't commit a violent act. He didn't do anything. Like, it's just like he had been arrested for weed and I think gun possession or something, and he didn't show up for his trial. Show up for your trial. You're supposed to show up for your trial. Also, they would have never known that if they didn't stop him for some bullshit.
Right.
It escalates. It escalates. She appears to have genuinely believed she was firing her taser, which is, it's not the defense you think it is. One, right. It's for the department's using as a defense, like, oh, it's just a mistake, could happen to anybody, except it's like, to offer that as your defense, you're essentially saying, look, it's not our fault. All we do is have very poor hiring standards and training.
Dude, or even like, right, like you said, it's not the defense they think it is. Because, like, okay, even if that's true, okay, I believe you. She thought she pulled her taser out and it was an accident. But, like, that is crazy that that's such a simple thing to have happened. Like, look, it could happen to anybody. It's like, it shouldn't be able to happen to you. They should be, like, very different weapons, you know? Like, that shouldn't be a mistake that you're even capable of making. I know, heat of the moment, very intense situation. But, like, it's just one of those things where, like, that don't make it okay that it's like, oh, this could happen very easily. It's like, it shouldn't. That shouldn't be true, what you just said, also, that it could happen that easily. It shouldn't happen.
You just ran his ID. You know where he lives. Let him drive off and go to his house and pick him up after shit's calmed down. Like, right. It's like, it's not, this wasn't some big one. He wasn't wanted for like a major crime. You can really let him drive off. You absolutely can. Like driving off from a traffic stop is not a death penalty offense. And like, here's the fucked up part about this. I suspect if she gets convicted, it'll be precisely because if you watch the video, she seems to immediately feel like she fucked up and she didn't mean to shoot him. And so her usually defense in this is, I was afraid for my life and I had to shoot, and they always get off into that. Right. She obviously isn't going to be able to use that defense because she immediately showed she fucked up and showed, when she felt bad about it. So that defense isn't going to work. So she's going to end up in prison for being honest about her mistake is the tragedy of the situation. If she just owned it and said she was really scared, the big bad black guy driving a truck, she probably would be get off. And like they're going to say there's a failure of training. She was a veteran of 26 years in the force. She was a field training officer who was training someone when she did this traffic stop. As Derek Chauvin was a field training officer, we had 3 trainees with him when he killed George Floyd. She was the president of the police union. She's helped other officers get away with bad killings before. Everything about this just stinks all the way through, and I hate it. It sucks. Nothing's going to change, and this is just going to keep fucking happening. Yeah. And this is something like Dante Wright's aunt gave a press conference today, and she pointed this out, that one of Wright's teachers when he was in school was George Floyd's girlfriend. This is how fucking common this is.
Dude, that's
this.
I mean, I know that's like the definition of coincidence, but that's crazy. It's always, you know, because like you said, that's how common it is. That's how small of the world that whole, you know. Yeah, it's just rough. It's rough. It's a rough subject, rough situation.
And the cops they started flying they were flying the thin blue line flag the day after the shooting at the police station. Like, they don't feel bad about this at all. Like, not even the shooter's the only one who does, is the fucking weird part about it. Her life's probably, I mean, she deserves to suffer some serious consequences. You shouldn't be doing bullshit stops and harassing people till they escalate to the point of someone dies. You're really bad at your job when you do that.
Yep. Well, you know, until next time, I guess we'll move on for now. Let's get to a different subject, a better subject. I hope. We'll see how the conversation goes, but we got some wonderful guests for you. Stephen Smith and Katey Lauer. Stephen Smith is a co-chair. They are co-chairs together of the organization West Virginia Can't Wait. Stephen ran for governor in 2020. He is organized with the West Virginia Healthy Kids and Families Coalition, the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, and the Harvard Living Wage campaign. He is also the author of Stoking the Fire of Democracy. As I mentioned, Katey Lauer is his co-chair at West Virginia Can't Wait and is the architect of the movement. Katey is a national trainer for Training for Change and the co-founder of the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum and West Virginia Trainers Project. Katey is currently working on a series of articles that tells the story and gleans the lessons from the West Virginia Can't Wait movement. So with that said, welcome to the show, Stephen Smith and Katey Lauer, everybody.
Hey, y'all.
Hey. Hello.
Hey.
There you are. Thanks for joining us.
Here.
Yeah. Glad to have you. Sorry for the depressing lead in, but you know, what are you going to do? America in 2021, right? So,
yeah,
West
depressing
Virginia.
is the only thing we have to choose from these days.
I know. All right. I know. That's right.
No, but you guys are working to make things better. So that's better than what we're doing. So let's talk about
Trying
that
to.
for a little bit.
Yeah, good on you. So West Virginia's come up frequently. Also, it's one of the, I'm ashamed to say this, but it's true. It's one of the few states I haven't been to yet to do stand-up comedy because I haven't been able to make it work out. And it's the number one on the list of places I haven't been that I want to go to because I know that's my people there. Got love for West Virginia. So we were talking last week and at the top of the show about the situation in Bessemer, Alabama with the labor movement there. And West Virginia is kind of, you know, in a lot of ways, sort of the birthplace of like American united labor disputes, right? West Virginia is the state of the working man, right? And because of that, Democrats have kind of reigned in West Virginia for a long time. But you look at the way it looks now, and you have people like Joe Manchin, and you still see a D next to their name, but something seems a little off about it. It seems a little different. You guys talk about that dynamic in the state of West Virginia?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Katey, you want this one?
Sure. I mean, the short answer is corporate Democrats have reigned for a long time. And so, you know, starting a few decades ago, Joe Manchin and his posse used the architecture of the Democratic Party to gain power. And now we're left holding the bag. Now we're left with the results of that. And so one thing we say is in West Virginia is that our politicians don't have D's or R's after the name; they have dollar signs. And I think Joe Manchin is a prime example of what that looks like in our state. So I think one of the things that folks might not know about West Virginia, that's something that gives us a lot of hope for the state and has been a big part of our organizing work, is there's about as many registered independents in West Virginia as there are Democrats and Republicans. And one trend we've been seeing over the last few decades that we've been seeing in other places in the country is that folks are so fed up with the corporate establishment of both parties that they're leaving them. And I think what that means is that folks are paying attention and that there's a lot of potential for working people to come together and win major victories in our state.
Right. So kind of on that note, saw a stat in 1996, roughly 65% of West Virginians were Democrats, 30% Republicans, 5% independent or third party. By 2016, 20 years later, 45% Democrat, 30% Republican, 25% independent or third party. And so the takeaway there is that a whole lot of people in West Virginia left the Democrat Party, but did not necessarily go to the Republican Party. Right. The Republican Party line kind of stayed static, but the Democrat Party membership in West Virginia, you know, took a bit of a nosedive in those 20 years. What's the explanation for that?
Yeah, well, there's two major myths that we hear over and over again, sometimes even said by West Virginians about West Virginia voters. One is the myth that West Virginians vote against our own interests. And when Democrats held power for 82 years and your life got worse, your dad's life got worse, your granddad's life got worse, is not voting against your own interests to stop voting for a kick in the teeth, right? The other myth that we hear all the time, especially in the national media, is that Joe Manchin is popular in West Virginia because he's a corporate Democrat. The truth is, his brand of corporate Democratic politics works really well for him and has decimated the party and the labor movement in the state, right? That as Joe Manchin's star has risen, the Democratic Party of West Virginia has tanked. And that also shows us a path out, right? That rather than buying into this national narrative that West Virginians are at the bottom of every list, that we're poor, that we don't know what we're doing, that we vote against our own interests, we can instead look to our history for examples, whether it's John Brown or the Battle of Blair Mountain or the teachers' strike 2 years ago, that when you look at what happens at the top in West Virginia, it's often this sort of highway robbery by out-of-state interests. But when you look at the grassroots, what you see is people who know how to take care of each other, know how to fight back, and know how to fill in when the government fails us. And that's the root of what we're doing. It's not something we made up. It's something we've seen and are trying to stoke a fire that already exists.
Why is Joe Manchin a Democrat? I'm trying to figure that. Like, is there any core Democratic Party belief or liberal belief that he has? Is he decent on labor issues at all, or like I'm trying to figure out what is it about the party that appealed to him, or is it just a better avenue to power for his particular personality?
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats were in power for a long time when Manchin was ascending to power, right? So it's the quickest vehicle to his own to build his own presence and build his own power in the state. One thing we've seen, interestingly or expectedly, with different political leaders in our state is they also just flip back and forth between parties. So our sitting governor, Jim Justice, is a perfect example of this, where he ran for office as a Democrat, was actually supported by Joe Manchin, and then he switched parties and now he's a Republican. And what we see in the state is there's this sort of opportunistic good old boys network that works across parties. They share consultants, they help each other get elected, and they go which way the wind's blowing. And so when Joe Manchin began his political career, the wind was blowing in that direction, and that's why he's a Democrat. And so what we think we need in the state is a movement that can take on that good old boys infrastructure, regardless of party leadership. And that's what we're up to.
Why do you guys think that? So, right, you've got a long history of working people movements in West Virginia, still alive and well, the teacher strike from a couple years ago and whatnot. And you track that along with that it was a very, again, Democrat state for most of that time, because that used to be the party of working people, right? And then we see this precipitous fall off in Democrat membership in West Virginia in the past 20 years. Why do you all think it is that, I know we call it corporate Democrats, but why did they just leave that sort of ball on the field? Meaning, like, how is it lost on them that that's such an opportunity for, not even like staking a claim, because they had the claim already, the Democrats, being the party of the working people, but like reinvigorating it, being the ones who speak to just working people. That used to be part of what they did. Like, what happened to that? And why aren't they still doing that now in states like West Virginia?
Yeah, you'd have to ask them, right? I actually think that I don't want to glamorize the history of the Democratic Party in West Virginia. There have always been people at the top who have used both parties to do right by them and their friends. And that's why the project we're in is not about the Democratic Party or persuading a few politicians. We say, our job isn't to persuade those people who have never had our interests at heart. Our job is to replace them. And that's the work. That what we're interested in is governing power, because anything less than that is just watching West Virginia get worse slower. And so that focus on governing power is sort of the core of what we're doing. And the way that shows up is a few different ways. One is that, we contest for power during elections. We build political machines and help working class candidates run campaigns, field, fundraising, communications, et cetera. If you're someone watching this and you want to run for office, you're not alone, and we'll walk with you from start to finish. Governing power also means helping those folks once they get elected. In 2020, we had 101 of us running together, pro-labor, no corporate cash candidates running up and down the ballot. Most of us first-time candidates actually representing the people of the state. 13 of us got elected in 2020. So part of our job as a movement is to support those folks who got elected, make sure they have the policy help and the legislative aids and all of the stuff that you need when you're governing, but you don't have if you're a working class person. And then the last piece of the puzzle is mutual aid. As West Virginians, we're used to pitching in when the government fails us, and whether that's setting up a harm reduction program in your county when there's an HIV outbreak, or whether it's driving your pickup to help your neighbor during a flood. Like, we're used to that kind of neighbors helping neighbors, and as a movement, we think that's an integral part of what we do, is showing up when the government so often fails to.
I think the other thing I would say about the Democratic Party is that part of why it worked when it worked is because there was enough organizing among working people to hold it accountable and to push it. And so, the history of labor unions in West Virginia is incredible. And what labor unions were able to achieve in the 1920s and 1930s and 60s and 70s. I mean, I hear like stories from old union coal miners about the things that they endured and fought for on picket lines. And it's the thing that the state is made of. We don't have that kind of organized working class power in the state. And so if we want a Democratic Party or a Republican Party or any kind of party leadership to actually work for us, it's gonna take rebuilding the kind of working class infrastructure that frankly the state has lost and many parts of the country have lost over the last several decades. Like, part of what we're up to is we've got to build institutions that can fight for it, because the party leadership isn't gonna do it on its own.
Kind of on that note, what do you all think about Bessemer in Alabama and the Amazon situation there recently and the outcome of it? I mean, again, you guys are kind of on the front lines of these labor movements in one of the states most steeped in the history of labor movements in this country. How do you all feel about that right now and, going forward, seeing that result?
I read this great article by Jane McAlevey that was just sort of like a post-op on what she saw happen in the state. And I think the big takeaway I had from it is, from her writing about it anyways, is that we've just got to get door-to-door, face-to-face, and do the relational work that adds up. And one of the things that's happened to our organizing over time is that we've swapped out in-person, like knocking on doors kind of work for social media campaigns and digital campaigns. And I think there's a place for that in our work, and we need it. And I'm glad there's a podcast tonight. I think we need this kind of stuff. And there weren't house calls that were a part of that campaign. Like, part of what we got to do is double down on the relational work that adds up over time. And I think the thing that's hard about that is it's going to take a while. We're in a generational fight, and it's going to take a while to do that kind of work. But that's also the kind of work that's going to add up and mean that we can win.
Mark.
Yeah, it's sort of like the mutual aid aspect of it's like really always important, I think, because it's hard to be villainized as like some like a horrific communist is going to herd you into camps if the person's helped you fix your porch. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting how political movements work, and so I like the sort of screw it, I'll do it attitude of this. Like, we keep asking about Joe Manchin. You're like, we don't talk about Joe Manchin. It's like, we got 100 people running because we're just going to get elected ourselves and do it. Because he's not going to get out of the way.
That's right. The best way to persuade an establishment politician is to work like hell to replace them. This, what we think about Manchin or Capito or any of these folks, they're like a ball player, right? That they love the spotlight, they love to win. It's a game for them because politics is a game for them because they have nothing for real at stake, right? So it's sport. And if you're a ball player, you only have to answer to two forces. One is your coach, right? That's your base, the party, whatever. In West Virginia, Manchin's base is Manchin, right? It's the Manchin machine. Or you have to listen to your opponents. You have to react to the people who are challenging you on the field of play. And so we don't think we're going to win with even the smartest messaging in the whole world or the best social media campaign alone. We're going to win because we challenge those in power at the ballot box. We challenge them by doing what they fail to do. We challenge them by claiming governing power for ourselves. And that, as Katey pointed out, is unglamorous, day-to-day, courageous work that actually most working class West Virginians are used to doing. And our job as organizers is just to kind of stitch that together and breathe a little life into it and support that energy that's already there on the ground.
So Manchin's kind of at the center of the filibuster debate, right? And trying to, the idea that the Democrat Party right now, while they have any measure of power that they have, should just get some policies in place, as well as they can, and try to get rid of the filibuster and all of that. And I just want, like, Mark and I have talked a lot on this show in recent weeks about our opinion that put as many of these policies in place as you can, and if they work the way that we all say they will work, right, and help people, regular people, then you'll be fine, and you won't have to worry about like backlash or whatever if your policies really do help people. And do you all, do you agree with that? You kind of like, you talked about it not being about like, forget the Democrat Party or Republican Party. We're just trying to do what we need to do to help the people here. But that's kind of what it comes down to, right? Like if the focus is on helping regular people and put more money in their pocket, then the rest will kind of work itself out, right? Or at least hopefully.
I think we're both maybe chomping at the bit for this one. I'll go first, Katey, and then I'd love to hear what you think. I mean, newsflash, Joe Manchin and Shelley Moore Capito don't work for us. They aren't trying. They didn't get elected to deliver good things to the people of West Virginia. I know that breaks your heart to hear, but all evidence to the contrary. You can make an argument that at most Senator Manchin has gone to bat for working people 3 times in his 30-year political career, and every single time was because he faced an imminent, credible, local threat to his power. I mean, this is it's not surprising. What he's doing is not surprising to anybody who lives here. It's literally how he got to where he is. And for folks who are outside West Virginia and get excited about what's happening here or interested in what we're doing, just encourage folks to reach out. That whether it's supporting the work here on the ground or even just learning more about West Virginia, it's infuriating to us to watch the stereotypes and the national news circus surrounding the senator and our state and all of the things that are said about it. So if you're watching this and you want to get more involved or hear more about what we're doing, just reach out. We're easy to find online, but we're always happy to talk about the real story of West Virginia, which makes it a lot easier to understand what's going on at the national level, and I think is instructive for those who want to build long-term power here. What would you add, boss?
Just that I think we, if we're not careful, will also let Manchin sort of drag us through the mud. So one thing we keep seeing Manchin do is say no to a major Democratic agenda item and be in the national headlines from 3 weeks about how he's positioning himself around it. And then he'll come out as a yes 3/4 of the way. And my very strong sense from operating in a state where Manchin's operated for a decade is that he's going to keep doing that. And so I think the good news is for Democrats that are worried about how Manchin's going to come down on key issues, the answer is that I think he's going to get most of the way on them. And I think the danger for us is if we make him the focus of our attention, if we go on the roller coaster ride or we play a role in the play that he's already orchestrating, we could end up spending millions of dollars and thousands of collective hours chasing him. And our calculation is we've just got to build something else instead. We've got to take him on, or we're just going to be in the place that is the weakest position for organizers, which is constantly responding to someone else instead of building our own powerful infrastructure.
Well, it's kind of that idea of like, trying to work with them or whatever. And it's like, no, just get rid of them.
No, just leave them alone.
Yeah, right. Like, don't forget trying to work. That's never going to work. Just go without them. That's the only thing you can do. Right. So,
right.
All right. So, before we let you guys go, you've already kind of touched on it a little bit, Stephen, but I want to give you an opportunity, both of you, to sort of explain to people how they can support what you got going on there with West Virginia Can't Wait, and how they can follow you and keep up to date, and lend a helping hand if so inclined.
Yeah, so we're gearing up for 2022 right now, and would love folks' support in doing more infrastructure and base building here. So what that looks like for us is running some rural media experiments. Thank you all for running a rural media experiment. It also means we're recruiting candidates and getting ready to build out a series of people's platforms around the state for the next cycle. We'd also love to talk to you about how we can build infrastructure that takes Manchin on directly as opposed to appealing to him. So you can find us at wvcan'twait.com, and we are more than happy to hop on the phone. So just drop us a line there.
Yeah, if you're watching this, chances are you're someone who is already in the fight one way or another, is thinking about hopping in. And I'll just say, in addition to what Katey said, if you're someone who's been involved before or never been involved before and trying to figure out where you fit and what kind of courageous action you could take, whether that's organizing your own workplace or neighborhood or running for office, we love being in that moment with people who are deciding where they fit in this movement. That's the question for all of us: is how does each one of us contribute to this this thing, whether that's West Virginia can't wait or just something fighting back in your own backyard. There's no individual action too small that we wouldn't love to be in it with you. So if you're listening to this, we're easy to find online. My cell phone is 304-610-6512. We'd love to hear from folks.
It's incredibly brave thing you just did, my man.
Yeah, respect, man. All right, well,
Matt told us you give out your cell phone number on the campaign trail, so I know this is your usual MO, but it still seems crazy to me, but go for it.
Yeah. Thank you all very much for
thanks for what y'all do.
Yeah,
appreciate y'all.
Appreciate it. All right,
thanks, guys.
Steven Smith and Katey Lauer, everybody. West Virginia can't wait. All righty, yeah, I love it. Again, I'm always so inspired by people that like do stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as opposed to us.
People that do stuff. Yeah, we talk about stuff. I run my mouth. I love running my mouth. But people that get out there and like do stuff, I just respect it so much. So yeah, good for them.
I'm feeling so inspired by this. So guys, Trey's cell phone number is
Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
I should just give out
people are mean to me, all right? It's a little different. Not like as if people aren't mean to them too. I'm sure they are. I'm just out of a weak constitution. Let's see. What else had come up? What do we got? We're taking comments and questions for everybody. Hit us with whatever you got about.
So we didn't get to it earlier. Have you watched any of Gutfeld, Trey?
Yeah. So if y'all don't know, Gutfeld is a new Fox News show that's like attempting to be the Fox News version of The Daily Show, I guess, because everybody always says conservatives can't do comedy, and let me tell you, proving that right. Matt, play this. Play the clip. It's gut busting stuff. Watch your sides. Make sure they don't split. Matt said he had the clip, and then Matt says, "Oh shit, I took it down." Never mind. I'll just tell you. Well, first of all, there's a lot. They did a lot of things, but like one of their big leading bits on Gutfeld was where they impersonated Brian Williams, and he was given a field report from the surface of Mars. He's like, yes, I took a helicopter to Mars, and while I'm here, I have invented the COVID vaccine and fist fought a woolly mammoth or whatever. And by the way, I didn't make those up. I put them in a different order, but those are actual things that they said. So, got that riveting, fresh off the presses, Brian Williams humor.
If you're not fully schooled in Fox News cinematic universe brain, the joke there is 6 years ago, the 10 p.m. MSNBC news host, Brian Williams, got caught making up a story about flying in a helicopter in Iraq or something.
Yes.
And he lost his job hosting the NBC Nightly News, was suspended for a while, came back as on MSNBC. And apparently this is still worth talking about in 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
Matt,
his daughter was in Get Out. Yeah.
This is a different clip from Gutfeld to give you an idea of the tone Matt got ready for. So play it.
Not today, but we'll invite the bunny back for a future briefing, as always. But the bunny's wearing a mask.
So that's where Adam Schiff's been.
Boom! Boom!
I love the punctuation mark they put on the joke with the Gutfeld falling down. It's like, fucking got him, baby. Got him.
I didn't know. I don't know where Adam Schiff was supposed to have gone. I mean, impeachment's over, so I guess he's not a big deal anymore. But yeah, I don't know. I did. It made me feel worse, Trey, the other night. Like one of his horrific monologues, I tweeted what I thought was a self-deprecating joke about how I can't believe they used all the jokes in my packet but didn't hire me. Right?
Yeah.
The number of people who thought I was sincerely complaining about not getting hired for Gutfeld.
Yeah, right.
It hurt my feelings on multiple levels. One, my joke didn't land on Twitter. Two, apparently people thought I'd write that level of joke. So I'm going to go put my head in the oven. We have got an electric oven, so it's going to take a while.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I have to be completely honest. A lot of the sort of like monologue joke examples from Gutfeld that people have been making fun of are like they have that different bent to them, the different slant, but they're not that much cheesier or whatever than a lot of late night monologue jokes are. If I'm keeping it real here,
Well,
it's still funny and it's easy to make fun of, but like it's kind of a lot of it is kind of par for the course in that world.
I think they are, but the way worse, but because they start from a point of view of being ideological and then work backwards from there.
Right.
Because if you're going to do an hour-long political comedy show that has to be for the Fox News audience, what you're going to end up talking about is Brian Williams. And
you're 100% correct about that. Yeah. Oh, but don't get me wrong, they're worse. It's just, it's funny because they feel like I don't know. It feels like what it is. Do you know what I mean? It feels like the Fox News version of that thing.
It's a ratings powerhouse too, baby. They're beating everyone in the late night talk show space except for Colbert right now.
Well, conservatives are just starved for good comedy, man.
It's like they're torturing themselves to fucking own the libs. It's so funny. It's like the end.
I got to be honest with you. I bet a lot of that really genuinely does slay for people, for their audience. I mean, like I bet a lot of it fucking plays and they really dig it.
Trey, you watch longer clips of it. Like he can't even get laughs from his crew and his audience is just the crew and the writers.
Yeah, but the crew is like those are people that like took a job or whatever. I guess a lot of. I'm just saying. I remember people that I worked with and like their particular senses of humor and whatnot, and I feel like they would sit there and laugh at the punchline because it's like this is the part where you laugh right here. Do you know what I mean? And like laugh really hard. Even, do you know what I'm saying? Like they're so dug into what they supposed to think about stuff that like they would. I bet you it's crushing some Republican households out there. That's all I'm saying. Kim Cusado says Republicans can't do comedy or satire. They should just stick to fear. They're really good at making the weak-minded afraid. I mean, yeah, 100%. They are their first ballot Hall of Fame fear mongers. That's what they do, baby.
Well, like, look, from someone who's worked on talk shows and worked on political talk shows, like they start from the wrong premise. They watch a show like John Oliver and think that they're starting with a liberal point of view and working backwards, and they're absolutely not. If you can't make some of that shit funny, they won't do it. They've got a bunch of episodes in the can. They're doing the funniest shit, and like Oliver will do whole segments where he just makes fun of mascots. He's not just doing political shit. So like they're already shooting themselves in the foot by thinking that's how this stuff works. They don't even understand how a TV show normally works. So it's a bad, yeah.
Yep. Annette Williams says conservative comedy is an oxymoron. The batshit crazy beliefs of conservatives are more hilarious than any joke they could write. Yeah, they definitely have a whole lot of self-parody going on.
I'll say this. I know that's a general. I don't think that's necessarily true. The bulk of stand-up comedy is inherently kind of conservative in some. Like the most common joke in stand-up is these kids today are soft and suck. Right. Mm-hmm. That's the core essence of most stand-up comedy, and it works. A lot of guys are really, really good at it, and it makes me laugh a lot of the times. I'll watch Bill Burr do a 5-minute bit about how vegans are pussies. I'll watch it. It's funny as shit to me. It doesn't sway my politics. But the idea that the conservatives there are a lot of funny conservatives. They just don't make their whole life about being conservatives. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like it's the whole act.
There's definitely there's definitely funny conservatives out there. And what you just said is 100% true. But I think that like when you try to make the sort of like conservative version of the Daily Show or of Bill Maher or something or whatever, you run into that like I don't know. I feel like it's hard for them to do it without just being racist or homophobic or whatever in a lot of regard. You know what I mean? And like, that's just, you get into punching down when you're doing that. You know what I mean? It's like, it just doesn't, I don't know. It just don't work the same way. Like, I don't think we showed any on the show and don't need to, but my cousin, he's not my actual cousin, Steven Crowder, we've shared clips of his in our group chat recently because he does comedy bits on his show, and they're like, it's just saying racist things. Like that's pretty much what it amounts to. It's just like saying racist stereotypes about black people or Mexicans or whatever, and that's what the joke ends up being, and it's just that ain't. But even that, dude, even that's not an excuse, because there's plenty of like quote racist jokes that are hilarious that other comedians have done.
Okay, Trey.
No. I mean bits. I'm talking about like Dave Chappelle or Tom Segura or whoever have done. They've all like there's humor you could do about race that is stereotypical but hilarious because it's just better. It's done better. But when you just get into just saying, like, oh, is it time to play basketball now? This is what black person Sesame Street would be like sketch. That's a real thing from Steven Crowder.
That Sesame Street sketch was horrifying. Like what? It was like they introduced the first two Black Muppets, and he dubbed over the audio, and it was like just like stereotypes from like 1973. It doesn't even hang together. It doesn't hang together as a bit.
It's basketball time. It's fucking whatever. Like literally just that type of shit. And those were like the jokes. So. Yeah, not a lot of redeeming qualities to it. M.A. Ross says because punching down isn't funny, and that is one of the generally agreed upon principles of comedy. Yeah, that's one of the rules. Yeah, I mean, like again,
punching down's
I don't
fun
think there are any. There aren't any hard and fast rules. You can always find something that breaks them because if it's funny enough, it's fine. But that's the problem they run into is they ain't funny enough. They're not funny enough to do the things they're trying to do.
That is the essence of it. Is if Greg Gutfeld was actually funny, he wouldn't be on Fox. He'd be playing Madison Square Garden to a mainstream audience, and he's not funny enough to survive outside that bubble with a crutch of people that think 6-year-old Brian Williams jokes are funny. That's really the reality.
Well, there you have it. You heard it here last, everybody. Conservatives struggle with comedy. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of Weekly Skews. We'll be back in 7 days.